Okay, good evening. Let's start the lesson. Last day, what we were discussing is about um, microorganisms and their negative effects to us. Basically, we learn about different microorganisms which can cause certain diseases. So, can you remember? I think you can remember this viruses, especially dengue, cold, and AIDS, HIV. These are basically virus diseases, and some are spreading using air, some are using mosquito vectors, and also through blood or basically the contact, physical contact. So the way of propagation and also method of spread we have discussed. So cold is basically coming through the respiratory system, very common these days. Skin disease, similar through the skin, dengue infects, but it affects our blood and all, and the body. And basically, either through a sexual contact or blood transfusion. Not just that, even through the wounds, these can affect. Because anyway, it should be like with the blood contact. So let's say somebody with the infection have given the blood, or some through a wound, somebody else's infected floods can be transferred. That can be some other reason. Or through that, AIDS can be spread. And tuberculosis is again a bacterial infection which which happens through air, respiratory system. And then typhoid. Right? Typhoid is also infection. A typhoid infection can happen. Again, this is called fever. These symptoms are mostly fever. Typhoid fever can also happen through digestive system with the food. That is a bacteria, right? Bacterial infection. So we learned about these things last day. And today we are going to discuss negative effects that can cause, actually negative effects of microorganisms. Microorganisms are negative effects. So which can cause diseases to plants that we have to discuss today. And fungi infection, yeast infection, rashes. So these are very common. Yeast infection in maybe a groin area. Also, those are some other things that can happen. Or the skin infection mostly happen through fungi. And malaria, amoebic dysentery is also an infection which can happen through amoeba and amoebic dysentery. And also leishmaniasis. Leishmaniasis is also a protozoa infection. So these things we have already discussed. Okay. So then after that, what we were discussing is about diseases caused by microorganisms to the plants. So what are the diseases caused by microorganisms to the plants? So one common thing is powdery mildew disease. Powdery mildew diseases are ඔගොල්ලෝ දැකලා ඇති ඔය කොළවල සුදු පාට නිකන් පුස් වගේ තියෙනවා. පුස් කියන්නේ මේක ඇත්තටම මේ ෆන්ගයි වලින්ම තමයි ෆංගස් ඉන්ෆෙක්ෂන් එක. ඒතකොට කොළ පාට මේ පත්‍රවල සුදු පාට පුස් වගේ මේ තක්කාලි වගේ දේවල් වල ඔය මේ මොනවාද මේ බෙල් පෙපර්ස් මොනවාද මේ බෙරීස් වල එහෙම ගොඩක් කොමන් මේ වගේ දේවල් ගොඩක් අපිට මේ පේන්න තියෙනවා. මේ ඒවා ලීව්ස් වල ඒ කියන්නේ මේ පුස් වගේ ගතිය තියෙන පුළුවන් කොළවල තමයි හොඳටම පේන්නේ. හැබැයි මල් වල කඳේ ෆෘට්ස් වල පවා මේක තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. That can even happen. එතකොට that is one thing that let's see a small video on that. I think I had a small one about this powdery mildew. This is how you can apply remedies on this. ප්‍රතිකර්ම කරන විදිය තමයි මේ වීඩියෝ එකේ තියෙන්නේ mainly, but let's see how to identify the disease and also
What's going on, gardeners? On today's 2-minute garden tip, I'm going to show you how to cure powdery mildew on your cucurbit plants with a completely natural remedy. Here you can see powdery mildew disease forming on this leaf.
හරි පාට පේනවා මේ තියෙන මෙන්න මේක තමයි නියම් පිටි පිටි වගේ පුස් පුස් වගේ තියෙනවා මේකෙන් සමහරලාට මේ ශාක පත්‍රය ඒ වගේම මේ පළතුරු සවුත් වෙන්න පුළුවන් කුණු වෙන්න පුළුවන් කාලයක් ගියාම ඉතින් ඒ වගේම මේවා මේ බොහොම වේගෙන් පැතිරෙනවා.
All of these white spots right here that you can see, that is all a disease called powdery mildew, and if left untreated, it could prove fatal for the plant. Cucurbit plants like zucchini, squash, pumpkins, gourds, melons, and cucumbers are extremely susceptible to a disease called powdery mildew. Here I have a zucchini squash plant that has survived all the way since April when I originally put it in ground, and I just noticed it's starting to get some powdery mildew on its leaves. While we could break out harsh fungicides in order to combat this problem, we can actually use hydrogen peroxide as a natural remedy that will kill the infection. All you need to make this remedy is a bottle of standard 3% hydrogen peroxide, and you will mix that in water at a rate of 12 tablespoons per gallon. That solution will be powerful enough to kill the powdery mildew.
So මේකට මෙයාලා remedy එකක් විදිහට දෙන්නේ hydrogen peroxide which is mixed with water, not concentrated one, ගොඩක් සාන්ද්‍ර එකක් නෙමෙයි, ගොඩාක් තනුක කරපු මේ එකක් තමයි යාලා එයා suggest කරන්නේ මේක remedy එකක් විදිහට use කරලා අයින් කරන්න පුළුවන් කියලා.
Now it's very important that you purchase 3% hydrogen peroxide.
මේකේ තියෙන 3%. And 3% hydrogen peroxide කියන්නේ ගොඩාක් අඩු percentage එකක්.
Make the solution. If you use a stronger concentration or a weaker concentration, you will need to scale the math accordingly. Now, right here, I have a water bottle that is full of 24 ounces of water. So I am going to maintain that same 12 tablespoons per gallon concentration, which is going to be 2.25 tablespoons of the 3% hydrogen peroxide mixed into 20.
අතන තියෙන වතුර සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ounce 24ක් වගේ. So you know how to convert this, right? Ounces to milliliters. You can just simply go to Google and do this. Ounces to milliliter conversion. So here you can see 24 ounces means it's closer to 700 milliliters. 2 tablespoons means again it is 20 milliliters, right? Tablespoons means so two tablespoons means again closer to 30 milliliters. But 2.25 and 40 milliliters again. 33 milliliters. 33 milliliters. So අතන තියෙන 700 milliliters අනුපාතය ඔය විදිහට තියෙනවා 700 to 30. Right. This is why I'm showing this, because it is not there in the science book. Because this disease is very common. මේක ගොඩක් වෙලාවට common එකක්. ඉතින් මේ වගේ එකක් කියනකොට ඒක avoid කරගන්න ඔයාලා remedy එකක් දැනගෙන ඉන්න එක වැදගත්. Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. H2O2, you have to mix it with water and then spray.
4 ounces of water. That is the same ratio, so make sure you do the proper math. Now that our peroxide solution is mixed, we must liberally coat all of the leaves of the infected plant with the spray. Be sure to coat every leaf on the plant and not just the leaves that you see covered by the powdery mildew. You can clearly see the infection is spreading onto other leaves, so every leaf is probably infected to some degree. Be sure to coat the undersides of the leaves too, because the disease tends to be even more severe under the leaves because the UV rays of the sun can't reach underneath the leaves to sterilize the surface. If you have a pump sprayer or a ULV fogger machine, that will work even better since you can spray the plants more quickly and efficiently. Be sure to spray your plants at sunset so the solution can sit on the leaves overnight without being burned off by the sun. Be sure to follow up with another spray.
Evening time එක දාන්න නැත්නම් ඉරේලියෙන් අග්ගල hydrogen peroxide
Spray the very next night and as needed until the infection is gone. Here you can see the same leaf that once had a severe powdery mildew infection. The powdery mildew is almost gone. There's still a little bit more remaining, so we'll follow up with the third treatment and that should take care of the rest. While the spray is effective at killing disease, it's even more effective as a...
So this is just a remedy, right? This is not the proper treatment. It's remedy. Remedy කියන්නේ අද්දෙහෙත් වගේනේ. ඒ වගේ එකක් විතරයි මේක. Just I just wanted to show you what is powdery mildew, and just I think now you know what is powdery mildew, and now you know a solution as well. But this is not an official solution. You have some official solution as well. So ඒවට තියෙන antipesticides තියෙනවා එක එක අපිට use කරන්න පුළුවන්. මේවට වෙනම හදපු බෙහෙත් තියෙනවා. මේ බලන්න. powdery mildew. You can use treatment. And there are like official powdery mildew treatments, like controls, and these things are there. Or you can use antifungus. So you have the antifungal treatments, so which is again going against the powdery mildew. Sulfur is another solution here. Sulfur is another solution. So these likewise, there are different solutions. Okay, let's go back. And what's next? So another thing is late blight. Late blight is also a problem which can occur in especially potato-like plants. Late blight is very, very common. This is also caused by a fungus. So a lot of infections which happen to plants are because of fungus. So let's see how this can be avoided. So what is late blight and how we can avoid that? So I have another video prepared for that. Let me explore that to you. This is late blight identification. And I will show the development part also, but let's very quickly look into the identification part.
Bodies, which resulted in many deaths over in Europe. The disease is a fungus-like pathogen that attacks both potatoes and tomatoes mostly, but anything in the same family as those type of plants.
Potatoes
and today we want to talk about how to recognize the plant and what you as a backyard gardener can do to actually help decrease the actual amount of late blight inoculum around for either your own garden, neighbor's garden, or commercial growers that may be in the area. So I want to first take and focus on a potato plant. The causative agent, which is a fungus-like pathogen that causes late blight in tomatoes and potatoes, is what we call an obligate parasite, in that it has to have living tissue to stay alive on. So it's the type of thing that doesn't just survive in the soil normally to be able to infect potatoes or tomatoes the next year after you've already had it. Now, you take a potato plant like this, early in the season, if you're going to get late blight, even though this has got some copper burn from an insect damage early on, what happens is if it comes from the tuber that's been planted, what you'll see early in the season is the growth, black growth with a little white fuzz on it coming up the stem. That growth came actually from the tuber. Now, remember, we talked about it has to have living tissue. So if you've got late blight in any given season, let's say this season, it can overwinter very well on the tubers. So that next year when these tubers are planted again back in the ground and you think, hey, I'm going to have a nice potato stand, make sure you examine these. The best thing to do is plant certified seed. Try not to save seed from year to year, because if you save seed from year to year, it may have had late blight. You got just a little bit of late blight growing on this tuber. Again, when you plant them the next year, you'll have it coming up, and it will come up actually up the stem and can cause lesions on the stem. Once you do that, then we've got a real problem again with it starting. Let's go take a look at some symptoms in tomatoes, and we'll talk a little bit more about the disease. The fungus-like organism that causes late blight is interesting from the standpoint of it's very mobile. From weather, when you got weather conditions that are gray, overcast like we have today, and wet, the fungus spore actually can move for miles in the wind. Once it lands, if the foliage is wet, the spore can actually move a little bit in that water on the surface of the plant and move to a location where it's going to cause an infection. 60 to 80 degrees with lots of moisture is the ideal conditions for late blight and the spores to be active. As I mentioned, what it does at first, when it lands on a leaf, it will germinate. And what it causes is kind of a water-soaked lesion. That's the first thing that you're going to be able to see on a potato or tomato plant as these spores move around. This is an early infestation. You can see how this looks very water soaked. And that's what happens with it. The lesion looks water soaked. And if you turn that lesion over, you can see underneath is a little blackish.
Okay, mostly this picture will explain the story. Very simple way. දැන් අර ඔක්කොම කතාව පැත්තක දාමුකෝ අපි. ඒක පැතිරෙන්නේ වතුර හොඳ මේ උකුලකින් පැතිරෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේම බීජවල තිබිලා ඒක ඇත්තටම ඉන්නේ living tissue එක. It will live in a living tissue. Living tissue එකක් නැතුව පස්සේ පවතින්න බෑ. ඒ කියන්නේ එක්ක කොලයක් හරි නැත්නම් අලයක් හරි මොකක හරි එල්ලිලා ඉන්න ඕන. ඉතින් එහෙම හිටියොත් ඊළඟ මේකටත් යන්න පුළුවන්. මොකද මේ පස්වල තියෙනවනේ අල එහෙම අරවා ඉතුරු වෙන්නේ. එන්න එකෙන් යන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් මේකේ අර පේන්නේ අර බෙරි වෙලා වගේ කොලේ. පොඩක් ඒකේ පිටිපස්සේ ඔන්න මේ වගේ තියෙනවා ෆංගස් එක හැදිලා. මේව දැකලා ඇති ගොඩාක් වෙලා දැන් ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ පැතිවල නම් අනිවාර්යෙන් ඇති. In your side, like definitely you can see because you are mostly these areas are cultivating these tomatoes and potatoes. ඉතින් ඒ වගේ කොළ වලට තමයි ගොඩක්ම මේක පේන තැන තියෙන්නේ. ඒ වගේම කඳෙත් මේක තියෙනවා.
There, and you can see all this white fuzz, if you would, that is caused by this fungus-like organism. And this is what produces the spores. The spores can drop down on plants underneath it. It can blow away in the wind. Later on, this actually starts to turn black in the middle, and you have just a nice green defined outline around the edge of this plant. Now, it also can attack other parts of the plant. This actually causes lesions on the stem too, as well as the water-soaked lesions that you can see all around this one. Here's a stem lesion. And this is the type of thing also that you'd see on potato. Same idea, only that's when it comes up from the tuber. This is going to be on the very base of the stem. But here in tomato plants, as the season has progressed, the spores have landed. It causes this blackened area on the stem. Then what happens is this blackened area again becomes covered with that white fuzz, and actually the spores will come from there. And finally, with tomatoes, it can attack the fruit. Once the spores attack the fruit, what happens to the fruit is it starts first off getting this brownish discoloration, and then eventually the fruit actually gets sunken. And again, you can find rows of white fuzz. The spores are starting to form and can be released from the fruit. So certainly at this stage, everything here needs to be destroyed.
Okay, that is just, and it has a life cycle, but I think we can ignore that part for the today. But you can just go and see how it develops and how it comes through wind, and so like it's like pollination. So it's coming to wind and then spread over all over the plant, and you need to be like destroy that. And remedies and all, yes, can be discussed, but not now. You can just go through, but now you know how to identify and how to distinguish that from powdery milk. Powdery milk එකේදී දැක්කනේ අර නිකන් පුස් වගේ තියෙනවා මිසක් අර වතුර ගතියක් කුණු වෙන ගතියක් පේන්නේ. ඒ කුණු වෙන ගතියක් වගේ පේන්නේ වතුර ගතියක් වගේ පේන්නේ මේකේ. Right? Okay. Then the next thing is wilting. Okay, what is wilting? Wilting also, we have a video about wilting. Yeah.
Although initially quite shocking, and something you never want to see as a gardener.
Okay, wilting. Right, this is basically in a bell pepper. You can see wilting. Kodavima. The single wilting. Is it the word? Like, I don't know. Sorry. Wilting කියන්නේ kodavima කියලා මම හිතනවා. Search කරන්න වෙනවා. Just because I didn't search the single word. So let me search and tell you. Wilting. මැලවීම කියන එක තමයි wilting. මම හරියටම සිංහල නම දන්නේ නැහැ, but anyway, just remember this as wilting. This also you can see in most of the plants. It's a bacteria.
In our plants. Non-woody plants, which is basically 99% of the crops we grow, use water instead of wood to keep themselves upright. And it's this internal water pressure that keeps the plants turgid and growing, reaching for those rays of sun. However, for as much water as plants absorb through their roots, they're losing a nearly equal amount to transpiration. And when that balance is challenged on a hot day like today, we get problems. Hi, I'm Jeff from the Ripe Tomato Farms. Welcome to another episode of the Garden Quickie, the show where in 2 minutes or less, we help you to have the healthiest garden possible. And today, we're talking all about wilting. What is it? Why do plants do it? And can it be fixed? Wilting, also known as flagging, is an extreme life strategy by plants to conserve moisture when the rate of transpiration by the leaves exceeds that of the water intake of the roots. The plants are dehydrated. They're using up more water than they can take in, which makes wilting a physiological response. This lack of water can happen for several reasons, the most obvious being drought and extreme heat, but it can also be brought on by damaged roots, poor soil, and high salinity. Fortunately, when caught early enough, wilting is easily reversed. Solve the problem causing the moisture imbalance, in this case drought, and the plant bounces right back, looking no worse for the wear. Make no mistake, however, wilting is not ideal. It's an extreme physiological response to a lack of water. But for us growers, it's a highly useful visual indicator that our plants need something from us. It's their way of telling us that something isn't quite right. You know what is right, though? Tuning in and watching the next episode of the Garden Quickie.
Okay, here you can see how to distinguish that from the dehydration. The වතුර නැති වුණත් මේ building වගේ play වෙනවා. හැබැයි then ඒ වගේම මේ වතුර නැති එක අපිට reverse කරන්න පුළුවන්. We can hydrate it back, but the thing is building වලදී එක පාටම බෑ. building වලදී අපිට ටිකක් මේකට treat කරන්න වෙනවා. That is what the building is. And you can see here then මේක නිකන් අර make a bacterial infection. Because of the bacterial infection, this happened. It looks like dehydrated, but it's not actually. And finally, it will die. So that is the third common thing that we can see in the plants. Okay. The first thing is we have learned about powdery mildew, and then the late blight. Late blight also problems like watery, and the third one is wilting. Okay, then food spoilage we have already discussed because like the bacteria and fungus can cause food unusable, right? It can be we can easily identify because of the odor or the physical change or the softness or the color, mainly odor and the racing, right? Because of the taste, you can identify something has happened. That can be a fermentation, putrefaction, or acidity. Fermentation is basically happening in sugar-based products or carbohydrates. Passim meaning carbohydrate, sugar, සීනි වගේ දේවල් තියෙද්දි ඒ වගේම ප්‍රෝටීන තියෙද්දි පූති භවනය නැත්නම් putrefaction වෙනවා. Rancidity, lipid මුඩු වෙන එක වෙනවා lipid තියෙද්දි. Okay, this can be like internal or external factors. Can be due we can control factors affecting the food spoilage. Like we can control, if we can control the temperature, humidity, and atmosphere, the gases available in the atmosphere, we can solve it. Amount of nutrients, moisture, and biological structure of the food is also affecting this food spoilage. Because when you reduce the moisture, make it dry, when amount of nutrition is high, that is also affected. And when biological structure is the food is easy to access, so when it is cooked or not cooked, so those are also affecting externally. So what are the things, and internally, what are the factors affecting you? Okay, then, so I think we have one more thing to wind up the lesson. So I think we have already done, but one small thing that we need to discuss, because this is very common in the environment these days. This can even happen in the future. This is something dangerous, that is biological weapon. That means people can purposely use microorganisms in a harmful manner. එතකොට මේක දැන් කොරෝනා අපි දන්නේ නැහැ කොහොමද කියලා. හැබැයි සමහර කට්ටිය suspect කරනවා. Some people are suspecting. Some people are telling that it can be a biological weapon. ජීව විද්‍යාත්මක අවියක්ද කියලා සැකයක් තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම සමහර වෙලාවට දැන් මේවා කලින් නිවුස් වෙලා තියෙන anthrax වගේ දේවල්. Bacillus anthracis is basically anthrax disease. Anthrax කියලා එක ලෙඩක් ආවා. ඔයාලට මතකද ඒගොල්ලෝ චූටි කාලේ වගේ ඊටත් කලින්ද මන්දා. So these things basically these things are basically affecting plants. Not plants, plants, no, not plants, living beings as a whole. ජීවත් වෙන සියලු ජීවීන්ට එක බලපානවා. ඒතර plants වලට විතරක් නෙවෙයි සත්තුන්ට විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ biological weapon එකක් විදිහට පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ මේ මිනිස්සුන්ට හැබැයි මිනිස්සුන්ට නැතුව plants වලටත් පාවිච්චි වෙනවා මොන වගේවත්. plants වලට මේ biological weapon use කරන වෙලාවක් මට කියන්න බලන්න. So when this is used against plants,
no idea.
මතකද වාට මේ අර එක සැරයක් ආව ඌව පැතිවල ඕගොල්ලන් පැති තිබද සේනා දලඹුවා කියලා.
Yes sir.
Like, can you remember that? There is something like sometimes එහෙම කරනවා. ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ මේ දැන් අපි හිතමුකෝ මොන හරි ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එකක් විකුණ ගන්න ඕන කියලා. ඒකට කම්පිටිටිව් ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එකක් තව රටක තියෙනවා කියලා. ඒක ඒගොල්ලෝ පොඩ්ඩක් සමහර වෙලාවට මොන හරි බයොලොජිකල් දැන් ඔක ගොඩාක් වෙන දෙයක්. අපේ ලංකාවේ අපි දන්නේ නැහැ. දැන් ගොඩාක් වෙලාවට ටී වලට හරිද ඔය වගේ ඉරිඟු ටී, ඒ වගේ corn tea, these plants are heavily affected because competitive market. දැන් ගොඩක් අය හැමෝම බලන්නේ තමන්ගේ ප්‍රොඩක්ට්ස් එක යවා ගන්න රට වෙන රටවල් වලට යුරෝපියන් කන්ට්‍රීස් වලට. මොකද ඩොලර්ස් කියන එක වැදගත් රටක ආර්ථිකයට. ඉතින් ඒ හින්දා ගොඩාක් මිනිස්සු බලන්නේ ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ ප්‍රොඩක්ට්ස් ඇග්‍රිකල්චරල් ප්‍රොඩක්ට්ස් යවන්න බලනවා. එතකොට ඒ වගේම ඇග්‍රිකල්චරල් ප්‍රොඩක්ට් විකුණ ගන්න බලනවා. දැන් අපි හිතමු මෙහෙම. දැන් අපි දන්නේ නැහැ හරියටම right, we don't know, we can suspect. මෙහෙම හිතමු අපේ ඉරිඟු අපේ corn products නැති වුණා කියලා. එතකොට අපේ අවට තියෙන රටවලට පොඩි වාසියක්. පොඩි නෙවෙයි ලොකු වාසියක්. ඒගොල්ලන්ට අපිටත් corn products එවන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේම අපිට රට යවා ගන්නත් බෑ. ඉතින් අපි යවන රටවලට corn products එවන්නත් පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේ හින්දා biological weapon පාවිච්චි කරනවා. මේක අපි හිතන්නේ නැති දෙයක්. හරි මෙතන දීලා තියෙන toxins produced by the microorganisms are harmful pathogenic bacteria or viruses which are used for military purposes කියන එකනේ කියන්නේ නෑ. military purposes විතරක්ම නෙවෙයි. It can be competition, it can be any willful damage. කොමාරි willful damage හිතාමතා කරන හානියක්. It's not just for මේ definition එක නම් එච්චර කැමති නැහැ. කමන්න එක තියමුකෝ. But it is not just for the military purpose. ඒක නිකන් මතක තියාගන්න. මේ military purpose ආමි වැඩවලට නම් ඒකට විතරක් නෙවෙයි. මිනිස්සු තරංගකාරී වෙළඳපොළ අල්ලා ගන්නත් biological weapon use කරනවා. Right? Therefore, please be aware about that. අපි චුට්ටක් ලියාගමුද ඔකට? ලිව්වෙත් නෑනේ කාලෙකින් මොකුත් නෑ. What is a biological weapon කියලා? Okay, please write it down. Bioweapons කියලා කියනවා. Okay, I will give note here itself. It use biological weapon or bioweapon කියලා කියමුකෝ අපි. Bioweapon is a type of weapon uses biological agents such as biological agents such as bacteria, fungi, viruses, or toxins. Toxins කියලා කියන්නේ ඒ වගේ නිස්සාරණය කරගන්න ඒ වගේ toxin වර්ගත් අපිට ගන්න පුළුවන්. සාරයන්. To purposely or deliberately හිතාමතාම to deliberately cause harm or even death. මරන්න උනත් පුළුවන්. To humans, animals, plants, anything, right? These are produced from living organisms. එක biological කියලා කියන්නේ. ජීවත් වෙන සත්තුන්ගෙන් ගන්න දෙයක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් toxin එකක් වගේ නැත්නම් micro organism එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. normally ගොඩාක් වෙලාවට micro organism එකකින් නැත්නම් සත්තුන්ගෙන් ගන්න සාරයක් ඒ වගේ දෙයක් වෙන උනත් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒවා සමහර වෙලාවට ඔය අහසින් එහෙම අපි මේ සමහර රටවල් වලට මේ වගේ දේවල් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඔය යුද්ධ කාලේ කරනවා ඒ වගේ වැඩ. අහසින් එහෙම ඉහගෙන යන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ කියන්නේ වලාකුළු වලටත් සමහරවිට උඩින් වගේ. ඒතකොට වැස්ස වැටෙද්දි ඔටෝමැටිකලි එනවනේ මේවා. ඒ වගේ වැඩ කරනවා. හරිද? මේ වාතයට නිරාවරණය කරනවා, ගෑසස් විදියට රිලීස් කරනවා. ඒක දේවල් කරනවා. සමහරවිට මේ ඉන්ජෙක්ට් කරන්න පුළුවන් ඇවිල්ලා කවුරු හරි. These are the things. It's a dangerous thing because like we don't know whether it's a natural natural microorganism attack or not. Some kind of times can be a developed virus. Let's see. Okay, let's see a small video on this as well. Not sure whether I have downloaded one. It should be. Finish writing?
Yes, sir.
Important thing you need to write down, because I'm not giving notes. That is not my practice. The thing is this, why I'm not giving much notes, because like you already get notes from your school and also some other places as well sometimes. But the thing is like you have enough time to write notes when you are free. But in the class time, during the class time, if you are writing, especially during the online class time, if you are writing big notes, that is basically wasting the teaching time. Right? That is why I'm not, but you can always write important points. Anything that you cannot understand, you can write in your own words. So I'm training you to the university system, right? But because that is the STEAM method. In the STEAM method is like basically it's not spoon feeding. හැන්දක් අරගෙන පොවන්නේ නැහැ. ඉතින් ඒක ඔයාගේ පැත්තේ ඉන්වෝල්ව්මන්ට් එකයි ඕන දෙයක් ඔයාලට ලියා ගන්න පුළුවන්. You can again watch the recording and write down this as well. Okay. This one, biological weapons.
Bioweapons are biological agents such as viruses, bacteria, and fungi used offensively against enemy combatants or civilian populations. These weapons are invisible, uncontrollable, and if you're not vaccinated or don't have immediate treatment, unstoppable. On today's episode of the Infographic Show, we're talking about some of the world's most dangerous bioweapons. We're going to tell you what they are, how they work, and what'll happen if they're ever used on you. Grab your gas mask and hazmat suit. We're jumping in. Number 1, botulinum toxin, also known informally as Botox. Botulinum toxin is extremely dangerous neurotoxic protein derived from the bacterium Clostridium botulinum in low oxygen conditions. Botulinum has been used as a medical treatment for conditions such as spasticity in the past, and is used to this day as a cosmetic treatment for wrinkles. However, if used in combat, botulinum toxin can be a horrifically potent biological weapon, seen by some as one of the most deadly substances known to man. What happens if botulinum toxin is weaponized and used against you? Being a neurotoxin, botulinum toxin blocks nerve cells from the brain, causing severe respiratory and muscle paralysis. Around 12 hours after contracting botulism, you're likely to experience fatigue, dizziness, vertigo, and blurred vision. Then you'll have difficulty swallowing and breathing. After that comes the severe vomiting, constipation, and diarrhea. And soon enough, you'll start to experience physical weakness, severe pain, and paralysis across the body. It's a slow and painful death, if not diagnosed and treated early. Combatants could poison food sources with botulinum toxin or utilize it in its airborne form, wherein the time between contraction and displaying symptoms can take days, meaning you could be doomed before you even know it. Number 2, aflatoxin. Aflatoxins are a type of deadly toxin derived from naturally occurring fungi across the globe. Even outside of their potential application as a bioweapon, aflatoxins already create huge problems for people and livestock everywhere, destroying up to 25% of the world's crop supply every year. Aflatoxins are commonly present in fermenting nuts and grains, and exposure to humans occurs most commonly through this vector. If enemy combatants got their hands on a significant supply of aflatoxin, any attacks using it could cause horrific damage to their opponents. In addition to killing or contaminating a nation's crops, low-level exposure to aflatoxins such as Aspergillus, Parasiticus, and Flavus over a period of time can increase the likelihood of people developing cancer in all their major organ systems. Longitudinal exposure can also result in birth defects and severely weakened immune systems. However, acute poisoning, known as aflatoxicosis, on the short term can lead to a painful death by liver failure. Its variance in symptoms also makes it difficult to detect before it's too late. Even low-level aflatoxin exposure after a long period of time can damage a population for years or even decades to come. Number 3, Bunia virus. Bunia viruses are a member of the Bunявiridae viral family, transmitted largely by rodents like rats and small arthropods like mosquitoes and flies, allowing them to thrive in hot and unhygienic conditions like dense urban areas. Bunia virus has the ability to decimate both human populations and livestock. If used by a combatant, Bunia virus could attack a population's food supply while also inducing dangerous sickness in its citizens. Most commonly, infection with Bunia virus leads to the victim experiencing a horrifying condition known as severe viral hemorrhagic fever. One of the most common varieties of Bunia virus is the Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, or CCHF. It's found largely in Eastern Europe, but it also occurs across the globe in places like Central Asia and the Congo. The symptoms of the disease at first appear mild, such as headaches, stomachache, fever, joint pain, and vomiting. However, they become more disturbing over time. Red eyes, severe bruising, nosebleeds, and increasingly violent hemorrhaging. If not properly treated, Bunia viruses like the Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever can have as high as a 50% mortality rate. Your chances of survival are literally like flipping a coin. Number 4, Marburg virus. Marburg virus, also known as Marburg virus disease and Marburg hemorrhagic fever, is one of the 2 members of the filovirus family, the other being the infamous Ebola virus. Much like the Bunia viruses, Marburg virus can cause the onset of severe hemorrhagic fever. While it can and has infected human victims, Marburg virus is largely considered an animal-borne or a zoonotic disease. Its most common vectors are rodents and cave bats, which are often reservoirs for this nasty virus. Symptomatically, it's extremely similar to the Bunia viruses, initially causing simple and seemingly innocent symptoms like headaches and fevers. A few days after contraction, the victim is likely to experience nausea, abdominal pains, cramping, vomiting, and diarrhea. However, over the course of about a week, the symptoms worsen and become extremely debilitating. The severe hemorrhagic fever finally sets in, followed by bruising and bleeding from the orifices. This blood, by the way, is infectious and can further spread the virus. If a combatant got their hands on these viral samples, it'd be bad news for anyone opposing them. Number 5, rinderpest. Thankfully for humans in the audience, rinderpest isn't an infection you can catch. However, in 2018, studies showed that the average American consumes around 220 pounds or 100 kilograms of red meat and poultry every year. The grand majority of this meat is domestic beef. That's why rinderpest has the potential to be such an effective bioweapon, because it's an extremely contagious and deadly disease that attacks cattle. Considering how vital beef production is to the economy and the food supply of the United States, an attack of the thought to be extinct rinderpest would be devastating. Cattle infected with the rinderpest virus suffer from a fever, followed by severe gastrointestinal discomfort that manifests in ulcers and diarrhea. The cow will also release an infectious discharge from its nose and mouth that risks infecting other nearby cattle by contaminating communal water sources. The virus also causes serious damage to the upper digestive and respiratory tract, followed by dehydration and then death. The rinderpest virus is a perfect example of the variety of potential bioweapons. A direct offensive against human targets isn't the only way to cause major infrastructural damage to an enemy. Number 6, Yersinia pestis, the plague. Yersinia pestis is a bacterium that causes perhaps the most terrifying and iconic infectious disease of all time, the plague. Spread largely through the oriental rat flea and other small arthropods, the Yersinia pestis is a highly infectious disease. The 2 different varieties of the plague are bubonic, known for killing most of Europe in the 14th century, and pneumonic. The incubation period for this disease is a single day to a whole week, after which you begin to experience some truly nightmarish symptoms. In the bubonic plague, the lymph nodes in the armpit inflame and inflate, creating large, painful buboes that later fill with pus and develop agonizing open sores. In even more severe cases, the disease spreads to the lungs, causing the pneumonic plague. This version of the plague is significantly more infectious than the bubonic plague, and typically can only be successfully treated if diagnosed within 24-hour incubation periods. Otherwise, a painful death is pretty much assured. Combatants capable of infecting people with a hardy strain of Yersinia pestis would truly be a force to be reckoned with. Number 7, Ebola virus. The other member of the filovirus family,
this one I think
Zaire
you have
Ebola
heard of. අනිත් ගොඩක් අහලා නැද්ද මේ Ebola. Ebola කියන එක අහලා ඇති. Ebola virus is also, it's a kind of a bioweapon. So likewise, there are a lot of recognized bioweapons, but in future and also in the current context, there will be new viruses and also bacteria and toxins which will be released to the world as the result of as the result of this competition and different terrorism things. So bioweapons are very, very common, and nowadays, because of the development of AI and also robotic field, you know, the xenobot-like organisms are now there. Xenobot is a man-made organism. I think organisms. These bioweapons will be very, very dangerous in the near future. So that you need to know. Okay, so you can watch the full video, but I'm not going to show you the full video now. But you know, so things like coronavirus is also spread like similar to a bioweapon, right? And also the things affecting crops and all also bioweapons. So maswala වලට බලපානේවත් bioweapons විදිහට පාවිච්චි කරනවා. තරඟකාරීත්වය සහ මේගොල්ලන්ගේ products විකුණා ගැනීම ගැන සලකලා බලනවා. ගොඩක් ඒවා අපි දන්නෙත් නැහැ. ඒ හින්දා තමයි මේ ජීව විද්‍යාත්මක දේවල් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට එයාපෝට් එකෙන් ගෙනියනකොට limitations තියෙනවා. සමහර රටවල් වලට දෙන්නේ නැහැ leather shoe එකක්වත් ගෙනියන්න. ඒ වගේ තියෙනවා සමහර ලොකු restrictions තියෙනවා. හේතුව මේවා spread වෙන්න පුළුවන් country එකකින් තව country එකකට කියන එක හින්දා තමයි සමහර රටවල කට්ටියට මේ ඇතුල් වෙන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ ඒ රටට. ඒ කියන්නේ vaccine කරලා නැත්නම් සමහර රට යන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ වගේ certain things are there to protect from these bioweapons. Okay, then with that, we have already completed the lesson. We have a very few questions to discuss. A group of autotrophic microorganisms. So can you tell me the answers very soon? I know no time to ready. It's okay. A group of autotrophic කියන්නේ තනියෙන් කැම හදාගන්න. Yes.
Fungi.
Or algae.
Fungi.
Fungi.
Yes.
Can they produce their food alone, or are they dependent on some other? Yes. Fungi හැදෙන්නේ කොහෙද? Fungi is basically they are in living tissue, right?
Okay.
Living tissue එකක නේද හැදෙන්නේ fungi. But
Yes,
algae, you know, algae is why autotrophic. Algae is autotrophic. The reason is basically algae is a kind of autotrophic.
Oh.
Right? The reason is why because it has chlorophyll. එයාලගේ chlorophyll තියෙනවා. algae වල සමහර algae
චොටි වතුර තුනක්.
right, you can see it has this green algae special. It has chlorophyll. Because of that, it can produce its own. So it does the photosynthesis, right? Here photosynthesis in algae, there is there. Algae has photosynthesis. But fungi is basically living in a living surface. Fungi වලට පස්වල නිකන් ඉන්න يعني හැදෙන්නේ يعني වර්ධනය වෙන්නේ සක්‍රිය වෙන්නේ living body එකට attach. Therefore it's not auto. Okay, toxic chemicals produced by the body of microbe or destroy sabotage or another microorganism is called
Antibiotics.
Toxic chemicals produced by the body of a microbe or to destroy or sabotage another microorganism is basically antibiotic. Yes. Then some characteristics of viruses are given below. No cellular organization multiply only when in the living cells, do not show the living characteristics such as respiration and growth. The correct statements of the above are
A, B, and C.
yes, it has no cellular organization. Then multiply only in the living cells, that is also correct. Do not show the living characteristics. Respiration, growth is not shown, but reproduction can be done. So ABC or the disease caused by the bacteria is this I have already.
Tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis, malaria, rabies, and Ebola. Malaria,
Malaria, protozoa.
protozoa, rabies. Rabies. Yes. Ebola is a virus.
Yes.
Okay, that is also so tuberculosis is coming through basically a bacterial infection. Then, so I think you can remember, like we have already discussed this in this table.
Yes.
Initially, Ebola here. Ebola is a virus, and here you can see. I can remember we have discussed a table. Not this. Here, which here we can see. Tuberculosis is a bacterial infection. Typhoid fever also. But malaria, then leishmaniasis, amebiotic dysentery is basically protozoan. Rashes, pityriasis is basically fungi infection. And you can see here cholera, dengue, Ebola, these are AIDS, these are viral infection. So which is not given? Measles. අතන දුන්නේ නැති එකක් තිබ්බද මොකක් හරි? rabies නේද? rabies තිබ්බා. වෙන කොහේ හරි තිබ්බේ. rabies. Only one match. Oh, where's that? It was somewhere I can remember, but I'm not sure whether in your book or in grade 8 book. Rabies is anyway as a virus, right? Rabies is a virus, basically. If you don't know, please write down the viral infection. හර මේ මොනවාද මේ ඔය හැදුනමත් පුතේ ඒක බෙහෙත් ගන්න නෑනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි සනීප වෙනකන් ඉන්නවා. සාමාන්‍යයෙන්. සනීප වෙනකන් ඉන්නවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් වැක්සින් එකකින් තමයි මේව කරන්න පුළුවන්. රැබීස් වලට අපිට මේ කොහොමත් වැක්සින් එකක් තියෙනවා.
Okay.
It's a viral infection, right? It's a viral infection. So Ebola is a virus. Malaria is a protozoan. And then tuberculosis is a bacteria. Malaria තිබ්බ නැද්ද මේක? Malaria තිබ්බනේ.
මැලේරියා තිබුණා.
Ometi protozoan එක තිබ්බ. Rabies තමයි තිබ්බ නැත්නම්. There are a lot of diseases. Okay. Then the technology used to remove environmental pollutants by apply microorganisms is called
bioremediation.
Bioremediation, yes. Bioleaching කියන්නේ මොකක්ද?
Metal extraction.
Low metal extraction. Okay, next question. State whether the following statements are true or false. Antibiotics are any chemical substance that is used to destroy or deactivate microorganism.
False.
It is not any chemical substance. So that is the only problem that I'm having. But destroying or deactivate microorganism is correct. But it is not any chemical substance. එතකොට මේ sanitizer දැම්මොත් ඒ වගේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් එන්නේ. ඒ හින්දා ඒක අර එතන පොඩි ගැටලුවක් තියෙන හින්දා actually it's to destroy or deactivate, that is true, but it's not all antibiotics. Sanitizer බොන්න හිතනවා. The vaccines are given. Tetanus contains weakened bacteria toxins.
True.
True. There are viruses are pathogens. Viruses are pathogens that display both living and non-living.
True.
True. Most microbes are environments are unfavorable to living beings. Most microbes in the environment are unfavorable to living beings. Most microbes. Yeah, mostly yes. No cannot plum, but mostly yes, right? It's unfavorable. Rhizobium, bacteria found in the root nodules of lithium plants, fix atmospheric nitrogen. Nitrogen tira කරනවා rhizobium bacteria එක ගන්නවානේ. So මූල ගැටිති වල අපි root nodules වල තිබ්බේ. That is also true. Okay, other things I think writing, you can write down and this and send me a WhatsApp. I will do the correction, right? For the question number 2. Okay, with that, I will stop for today. Then good night. Next day, we need to start our new lesson, which is about organs, eye and ear. I will start that next day. Good night.
Good night, sir. Thank you, sir.